Hey guys, tonight we step into a world that smelled of iron, sweat, and something faintly rotten, kind of world where your alarm clock isn't a ringtone, but the scream of a pig about to meet its fate. You probably won't survive this one, but let's see how far you get. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, comment where you're listening from and what time it is right now. I want to see who's still awake at this ungodly hour. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before sunrise, when the air still tastes like smoke from last night's hearths. The streets are silent, except for the occasional cough from someone still drunk on yesterday's cheap ale. You pull on your apron, thick, cracked leather stiff with salt and blood, and step into the narrow lane leading to the butcher's stall. The smell hits you first. Always the smell. You'd think after years of this you'd get used to it, but no. It clings to your nose, your hair, even your dreams. Inside the stall, the wooden table glistens with yesterday's work. A dull red film coats everything, knives, floorboards, and your reflection in the bucket of rinse water. You grab the cleaver, test its edge against your thumb, and feel that small tremor of power. You don't own much in this world, but this blade listens to you. Outside, the first light leaks across the rooftops, and soon enough, the customers will come. Housewives with coins tucked in handkerchiefs, tavern boys running errands, soldiers with the hungry look of men who've seen too much. But for now, it's just you and the carcass hanging from the hook. You step closer, and the smell thickens, copper and salt, a perfume of necessity. You slice, you cut, you separate fat from flesh with mechanical grace. Every motion practiced, efficient, almost beautiful in its precision. Then there's that sound again, the squelch that echoes when steel meets sinew. You don't even flinch. The rhythm of your work is hypnotic, almost holy. Some say a butcher's shop is a place of death. You've always thought it's more like a temple, only here. The prayers are whispered through cuts, not words. A stray cat slinks in, eyes glowing in the dimness, waiting for scraps. You toss it a piece, watching as it disappears back into the shadows. You envy it a little. No taxes, no debts, no nobles to please, just hunger and survival. By mid-morning, the market hums with noise. Coins clink, meat thuds. Someone argues over the price of lamb. Behind it all, the steady rhythm of your knife keeps going, the heartbeat of the medieval town. One day, they say, someone might invent a cleaner way to do this. A place where animals are killed humanely, meat inspected, disease controlled. But that's centuries away. For now, you rely on salt, superstition, and luck. You pause for a moment, wiping sweat with your sleeve. The flies have found you again, a whole army buzzing at your ears. You wave them off, muttering curses you learned from the tanners down the lane. The smell from their vats mixes with yours, and the whole street becomes a carnival of decay. You've heard stories about butchers who got sick from tiny invisible things hiding in the blood. Curses, they call them. Bad luck, maybe punishment. But you've seen the boils, the fevers, the trembling hands. You know it's more than superstition. Scholars still argue whether medieval butchers unknowingly spread diseases through their tools or simply worked in conditions too vile to survive for long. Either way, you keep your knives sharp and your prayers sharper. Sometimes, you think about quitting. Maybe become a baker, something that smells better, at least. But then you remember the famine years, when even bakers starved. People will always need meat. People will always come back to you, coin in hand, asking for something to feed their families or their dogs. When times get desperate, a boy runs in, eyes wide. "Mister, my ma says she pay tomorrow." You nod and hand him a thin cut, pretending not to notice his shaking hands. You've been that boy before. There's a strange comfort in it all, the routine, the familiarity, the way you know exactly how each morning will unfold. And yet, beneath it, there's always that whisper of danger. One slip of the knife, one infected wound, one wrong cut, and you could end up on the other side of the table. You remember old Thomas, the butcher from across the bridge, nicked his hand one day, didn't clean it. A week later, his arm turned black. They buried him before he finished rotting. You still think of him when your own hand starts to ache. The bell rings outside, the town watch signaling the start of the day. You look up, light spilling through the doorway, illuminating the steam rising off fresh cuts. The day begins again. You stretch your neck, roll your shoulders, and start another round. For all the filth, the noise, the endless stains that never wash away, there's a strange pride in your work. You feed the city. You keep its heart beating. You are, in your own bloody way, a lifeline. You hang up the morning's work just as the church bells toll, and for a brief second, you look at your hands, the same hands that hold life and death in equal measure, and wonder how many years they'll keep doing this before they give out. But there's no time for that now. A new customer's at the door. The cleaver feels steady in your palm. You smile, or something like it, and get back to work. Because in this world, everyone's got blood on their hands. Yours just happens to be literal. The night doesn't belong to nobles or knights, it belongs to you, the gong farmer. You start when everyone else is asleep, because your job is something no one wants to see, smell, or even acknowledge. You move like a shadow through narrow alleys, carrying your tools of the trade, a long-handled shovel, a rope, and a torch that barely keeps the darkness at bay. Your destination waits under the ground, the castle's cesspit, a deep, reeking hole filled with what everyone else leaves behind. You take a deep breath, well, as deep as you dare, and climb down the ladder slick with filth. The air is thick, warm, and alive with a stench that could make a grown man faint. You learned long ago to breathe through your mouth. It doesn't help much. You reach the bottom, boots sinking into something that squelches. The sound is obscene, like wet leather being wrung out. Rats scatter as your torchlight flickers across the surface. They're your constant companions here. Some people fear ghosts or monsters. You fear methane. One wrong spark, and you'll go up like a torch yourself. You start shoveling, each movement slow and heavy. The waste slides into buckets, which you hoist up to your helper waiting above. He's probably gagging already. You stopped gagging years ago. The worst part isn't the smell. It's the heat. Down here, the air feels alive, buzzing, humming, almost whispering. The cesspit ferments. Gas is bubbling like a cauldron. You feel them against your skin. Sometimes you find strange things mixed in with the filth rings. Coins, toys dropped by careless hands. You keep the ones you can clean, sell them in the morning for an extra meal. That's your version of treasure hunting. You pause for a moment, resting the shovel. Water or something pretending to be water drips from above. You stare at the torchlight dancing on the walls, the shadows twisting into shapes that look almost human. Maybe they are. Maybe the pit keeps memories. There are stories about men who went down and never came back, not because the pit swallowed them, but because the gases did. The silent death, they call it. You've seen it once yourself. A new guy, too eager, lit a second torch. The air hissed, flashed blue, and then gone. The others had to fish him out with ropes. You never learned his name. Above ground, people pretend not to know you. You pass them on the street, and they turn their heads away. But when their cesspits overflow, they come knocking at your door, begging for help. The irony doesn't bother you anymore. You like being invisible. Invisible people survive. Scholars still argue whether gong farmers were paid well or merely tolerated out of necessity. Some records say they earned more than craftsmen, but it's hard to count coins when your hands smell like the underworld. By the time the church bells ring midnight, your shift is nearly done. The buckets line the edge of the pit, ready to be hauled out of town to the dumping fields. That's the part no one sees, the moonlit procession of waste. Cart wheels creaking, the smell trailing behind like a ghost. You climb up the ladder, every rung slick and uncertain. At the top, the night air hits your face cold, sharp, heavenly. You gulp it in, even though it carries the faint smell of smoke and tanneries. It still tastes like freedom. You wipe your hands on your tunic, though it's pointless. The stench never leaves. It seeps into your skin, your hair, your dreams. The town's dogs avoid you, the cats follow you, and children whisper that you're part demon, part man. Maybe they're right. You've seen more of what's beneath the city than anyone should. You trudge home through empty streets. The cobblestones glisten faintly under the moonlight, slick from last night's rain. Somewhere a lute plays soft, lonely. A drunk hums along, blissfully unaware that you're walking past carrying buckets that could wipe that grin off his face. You laugh under your breath. There's humor here if you know where to look. Like the time the mayor's cesspit backed up during a banquet. They begged you to work immediately, gold in hand, perfume burning in the air. You remember him holding a scented cloth to his nose while you climbed down. Nobles and waste-some things never change. There's talk that someday someone will invent a better system. Pipes, maybe, running water, clean streets. You can't imagine it, but if it happens, you hope someone remembers the people who made it necessary, the ones who worked where no one else would go. By the time you reach your hut at the edge of town, dawn is just a rumor on the horizon. You strip off your clothes, wash your hands in a bucket of cold water, and lie down on your straw bed. Your body hums from exhaustion, your mind oddly calm. You close your eyes, and the smell is still there, wrapping around you like a memory that won't fade. But you don't mind. It means you're alive, and in your world, that's all that really matters. Outside, the church bells ring for morning prayers. The city wakes to clean streets and empty pits, never thinking about the night creatures who made it so. You smile in the dark, drifting toward sleep, because while others pray for heaven, you've already seen what waits beneath. The clang of metal wakes you before dawn. Again, you've been sleeping on straw, but it might as well be gravel. The bruises from yesterday's training haven't even started healing. You stretch, and your back cracks like a wagon wheel in winter. Welcome to another day as a night squire. Outside, the training yard already hums with noise hooves on cobblestones, the metallic rhythm of practice swords, and somewhere in the distance, a man cursing because his armor pinched something it shouldn't. You grab your master's breastplate, still warm from yesterday's polishing, and stumble into the cold morning. You're not a knight, not yet. You're the invisible one behind the glory, the one who tightens straps, cleans wounds, and fetches water while others cheer the heroes. Still, when you watch him, the knight you serve riding across the yard with the dawn at his back, part of you believes you'll be next. One day, the armor weighs as much as a small cow. You hoist it over your shoulder, muttering words your priest would faint to hear. The straps cut into your palms, the iron cold against your chest. It takes you nearly 10 minutes to get everything lined up correctly, and even longer for your master to put it on. He doesn't thank you, of course. He just grunts, tests his sword's edge, and rides out toward the training field. You follow, carrying his shield and spare weapons, tripping on the uneven ground as you go. The other squires glance your way, with that mix of pity and amusement only teenagers trapped in servitude can manage. Everyone knows who serves the most demanding knight. Lucky you. By mid-morning, your shirt is soaked, your arms ache, and you've already been yelled at twice, once for not tying a strap tight enough, and once for breathing too loud. It's fine. You tell yourself this is all part of becoming something greater. You watch your knight spar with another, blades flashing in the sunlight. The sound is sharp and beautiful, like church bells made of steel. You can't help but imagine yourself in his place, sword in hand, everyone watching. But then reality bites literally, because the warhorse decides your sleeve looks edible. You shove it away and keep watching. The knights move like dancers, each strike a step, each parry a rhythm. And then, suddenly, one falls. His armor doesn't save him. He hits the dirt hard, and you hear the wind rush out of him. The crowd gasps. You've seen it before. Armor protects, but it also traps. If you fall wrong, it can crush you. People don't think about that when they picture knights. They imagine heroes. They don't imagine the smell inside the helmets, the bruises that never fade, the infections that follow every wound. When training ends, your master tosses you the sword. It's heavier than you remember, and the hilt is slick with sweat. You clean it carefully with all, watching your reflection warp along the blade's curve. You look tired, older than you should. That afternoon, you head to the stables. The horses snort and shift as you pass. You know each one by name, by mood, by bite strength. You brush them down, refill their feed, and check their hooves. This part you actually like. Horses don't shout at you or make you kneel for hours. They just breathe loud and honest. A stable hand joins you, chewing on a piece of straw. You ever think of quitting? He asks. You shrug. And do what? Be a farmer. He laughs. Better that than dying in someone else's armor. He's got a point. But you can't quit. Not when you've spent years serving, learning, waiting for the day your name might be called, for the day your master finally knights you, tapping your shoulder with that same sword you've spent half your life cleaning. Still, you've heard whispers about squires who never got knighted, who grew old polishing other men's glory until their hands gave out. You try not to think about that. Scholars still argue whether squires truly lived better than peasants, or were simply noble servants in training. You suspect it's both. You eat better, sure, but you bleed just the same. Evening comes, and the castle hall glows with torchlight. The knights feast, loud and careless, spilling wine on the same armor you just spent hours polishing. You stand in the corner, waiting for a signal, refilling goblets when called. One knight jokes that squires are the angels of filth, always cleaning up after men who think they can't sin. You laugh when they do, because that's what's expected. Inside, you imagine hitting him with the jug, just once. The night ends slowly. The feast fades, and the laughter turns to snores. You help your master out of his armor, piece by piece, laying it on the table with care. It's almost intimate, this ritual of metal and flesh, of exhaustion shared in silence. For a second, he looks at you differently. Not bad today, he mutters. It's not thanks, but close enough. You nod, say nothing, and leave before the moment can vanish. Outside, the stars hang cold above the courtyard. You sit on the well's edge, breathing in the quiet. The sword rests beside you, glinting faintly, You touch the hilt, just once, someday, maybe. For now, you're just the hand that sharpens the blade, the shadow that follows the legend. But even shadows, you tell yourself, only exist when there's light. The hammer's echo greets you before the sun does. A steady clang, 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 rhythm of creation and destruction. You're halfway up a scaffold before you're even fully awake. Boots slipping on stone dust as the dawn light seeps across the unfinished castle wall. The air smells of lime, sweat, and ambition. You're a castle mason, builder of king's dreams and gravedigger of your own spine. Every stone you lift feels heavier than the last. But the foreman's shout cuts through any complaint. Faster. The Lord wants this tower done before winter. The wall stretches around you, a jagged skeleton of rock and mortar. Below, the courtyard teems with men, hauling, mixing, shouting, cursing. Above, the wind howls like a restless ghost. You wedge a block into place, hammer it with precision, and pray it holds. The scaffolding sways beneath your feet. You've learned it down. There's no safety rope, no helmet, just faith in your balance, in your grip, and in the mercy of gravity. You saw what happened last month when old Walter missed a step. One moment he was laughing. The next, his laughter ended in a thud that silenced the whole yard. They buried him behind the wall he helped build. The stone above his grave looks exactly like the others. Your hands are raw, the skin torn and toughened. Each fingertip feels like stone itself. When the sun rises fully, its warmth doesn't comfort, it burns. You pause to wipe your brow, squinting toward the horizon. The castle looks magnificent already, towers biting into the sky, walls curving like the ribs of some massive beast. You're proud of it. Even if no one will ever know your name, a master mason climbs up beside you, checking your alignment. His beard is white with dust, his eyes sharp as chisels. Good work, he says, almost grudgingly. But mind the mortar line. The Lord's steward will check it. You nod. The steward, a man who's never lifted a stone in his life but decides which ones stay or go. You imagine what he'd say if he spent a day up here, probably scream. All the way down. You mix another batch of mortar, lime, sand, water, stirring it with a stick that used to be part of a tree, now condemned to serve the wall. The smell bites at your nose. Lime burns your hands if it touches skin, so you work fast. No gloves, of course. Gloves are for men who can afford them. A raven lands on the beam beside you, cocking its head. You stare at it, and it stares back, as if it knows how fragile your footing is. Not today, you mutter. You'll have to find another soul. The bird caws once, then flies off. You keep working. The rhythm is everything. Place, hammer, mortar. Place, hammer, mortar. A song without melody but with meaning. Down below, apprentices carry buckets, their arms trembling. You remember being one of them. Back then, you thought masons were half-gods, creators of fortresses that could defy time. Now you know better. You're not defying time. You're feeding it. Every stone you lay is one step closer to. Still, there's pride. A strange, stubborn pride. When travelers pass this castle decades from now, they'll marvel at its strength. They'll never think about the men who bled into the mortar, whose coughs echoed off these same stones. But that's fine. The wall will remember, even if people don't. Scholars still argue whether medieval masons were driven by faith, duty, or the desperate need to eat. Maybe all three. You believe in the craft more than in the church. The church promises heaven. Masonry builds something you can touch. Midday heat bears down. You climb down for water. The bucket's lukewarm, but it might as well be wine. You sit in the shade with the others. Someone tells a joke about nobles falling off their horses. Laughter ripples, tired but genuine. Then the bell rings, back to work. You climb again, higher this time. The wind picks up, whipping your tunic against your body. Clouds gather far off, bruised and heavy. A storm's coming. You work faster. Storms mean mud, delays, anger from above. Not from God, from the Lord of the castle. The scaffold creaks. The nails groan. You hear a crack and freeze. A plank shifts beneath your foot. Your stomach lurches. You grab the nearest beam, heart pounding. For a second, the world tilts, spinning between sky and stone. Then it steadies. You exhale, shaking, forcing yourself back into rhythm. You don't call for help. No one does. If you fall, someone else will take your place tomorrow. Work doesn't stop for ghosts. By evening, the storm breaks. Rain hisses against the stone, turning mortar into soup. You cover what you can, muttering curses drowned by thunder. Lightning flashes, illuminating the tower's silhouette. Your day's work glistening wet and finished. When you finally climb down, every muscle screams. The ground feels strange, too still after hours of swaying heights. You walk to your tent, drenched, shaking, half proud, half numb. You eat your supper cold. Bread, onion, a bit of cheese. The others sit around a fire, talking about their families, their next job, the tavern they'll visit once this wall is done. You just stare at your hands. They tremble slightly, not from fear, but from habit, as if still holding the hammer. You lie down, rain pattering on the canvas above you. The sound is soft, rhythmic, almost comforting. You close your eyes, and all you see are stones, endless stones stacking into the dark. Tomorrow you'll climb again. Tomorrow the wall will rise a little higher. And someday, when it's finished, people will call it beautiful. You'll call it heavy, because beauty, in your world, always comes with broken backs. The smell of vinegar and death hits you the moment you open the door. It's morning, but you can't tell. Any more sunlight barely cuts through the fog that hangs over the city. Somewhere, a bell tolls, slow and deliberate. Another one gone. You don't even flinch. You are a plague doctor. At least, that's what they call you. Beneath the long black coat, the gloves, and that eerie bird-like mask, you're just another person trying not to die. You tie the straps tight, making sure no air leaks through. The leather creaks as you adjust the beak, stuffed with herbs, rosemary, mint, lavender, and whatever else you can find to keep the stench of rot at bay. You check your tools, a wooden cane for distance, a pouch of leeches, a vial of vinegar, and your notebook, where you record names that won't live to see the next moon. The streets are quiet, too quiet. You step out, boots crunching, over straw that was laid down to soak up what people no longer wanted to see. You walk past shuttered windows and doors marked with red crosses. Sometimes, you hear crying inside. Sometimes, silence. You've stopped knocking. Now, people call you before they call the priest. That's how bad it's gotten. You turn a corner and almost collide with a cart piled high with bodies. The driver nods at you, face covered with a rag. You nod back. No words what's left to say. At the next house, a woman waits by the door, her face pale and drawn. Please, she whispers. He's still breathing. You step inside. The air is thick, heavy with sickness. A man lies on the bed, his skin mottled purple, his breathing shallow. You take a cautious step closer, extending your cane to lift the blanket. His eyes flicker open glass marbles swimming in fever. He tries to speak, but his tongue is swollen. You shake your head gently. Don't. You murmur through the mask. You take his pulse. Slow, fading. You reach into your bag and pull out a small pouch of herbs, place it on his chest, and whisper the lie you've said 100 times. This will help. It won't. But it gives them something, hope, maybe? A softer death. When you leave, the woman is crying quietly. You write his name in your notebook. Space is running out. Scholars still argue whether plague doctors helped or simply delayed the inevitable. Some think you were heroes, others that you were grim symbols of death itself. You don't have time to care which one's true. Outside, a group of children chase a rat through the street. You shout at them to stop. They laugh, not understanding. You wish you could tell them that the rat carries death on its back, that every flea is a dagger waiting to strike. But no one listens to the man in the mask. The air grows thicker as you move toward the river. A soft drizzle begins to fall, turning ash and dirt into gray sludge. You stop by the bridge, watching as men dump lime over bodies in hastily dug pits. The lime hisses, swallowing the smell for a moment before it returns, stronger. You feel it creeping. You think back to when this started, just whispers at first. A sickness from the east. Ships arriving with dead sailors. The church said it was punishment. The scholars said it was bad air. You said nothing, because you didn't know. You still don't. At noon, you meet another doctor near the marketplace. His beak mask is cracked, the glass over one eye missing. How many today? He asks. Too many? He laughs, a hollow sound that doesn't reach his eyes. Maybe tomorrow will be better. You both know it won't. You share a small loaf of bread, soaked in vinegar. Because someone once said it keeps the sickness away. It doesn't. But it gives your hands something to do besides shaking. When he leaves, you stay. The city feels smaller now, folded in on itself. The laughter that once echoed through these streets is gone. Even the church bells sound tired. You stop by another house. The door creaks open, revealing a child standing alone. She can't be more than 7. Her face is smudged, her eyes too old for her age. Mom is sleeping, she says. You follow her inside. The mother lies still, a rosary tangled in her fingers. You kneel beside the child. Do you have anyone else? She shakes her head. You give her a piece of bread, a drop of water, and the softest tone you can manage through the mask. Stay near the church. Someone will find you. You don't tell her that the priests are dying, too. As the sun sets, the sky turns the color of dried blood. You make your final notes for the day, names, dates, symptoms, patterns you hope will make sense someday. You wash your hands in vinegar, again and again, until the skin cracks. Then you sit by the window, staring at the city that's slowly becoming a graveyard. You can hear the distant chants of monks, the tolling of the bell, the faint cry of a newborn who might not see tomorrow. You wonder if anyone will remember you when this ends. Probably not. Your mask makes you faceless, and faceless men rarely make history. But you keep walking into the next house and the next, because someone has to. Because even when death is certain, the living still need company on the way out. And maybe that's the only cure you ever really gave. You've been staring at the same swirling smoke for an hour now. It curls up from the crucible, green at the edges, sweet in smell, and dangerously close to turning into fire. You should move it off the flame, but curiosity keeps your hand frozen. The line between discovery and explosion is razor thin, and you've been dancing on it all week. You're an alchemist's apprentice, which sounds noble until you realize it mostly means you're the one who breathes the fumes first. The workshop is your world. Shelves packed with bottles of powder and ash, skulls, dried herbs, and books so old the pages crumble at a sigh. Every surface is stained with secrets. Your master paces behind you, muttering equations that sound like prayers. His beard has a streak of silver now, though whether it's from age or repeated exposure to mercury, you're not sure. He stops beside you and squints into the smoke. Add the salt, he says, voice sharp. Not too much, or you'll kill us both. You obey. The mixture hisses, then calms. A thin line of golden liquid forms at the bottom of the flask, shimmering in the candlelight. You both stare at it, holding your breath. For a moment, the room feels sacred. Then it fizzles out. Another failure. Your master sighs and scribbles something into his ledger. We're close, he mutters. He's always saying that. You rub your eyes, coughing. The air tastes like metal and burnt honey. You glance at the open window, but the wind outside carries more soot than relief. The town beyond the walls feels distant. Ordinary people living ordinary lives while you spend your nights chasing the impossible. Gold from lead, life from death, divine truth from dust. Sometimes you wonder if it's worth it. Then again, you've seen glimpses, small, fleeting miracles. A stone that glowed faintly in the dark, a potion that healed a wound faster than prayer, and once, a mixture that turned silver to something that looked almost like gold. Almost. Scholars still argue whether medieval alchemists were proto-scientists or deluded dreamers chasing divine secrets. You think they were both. The line between faith and madness has always been thin. Your hands tremble as you pour the failed batch into a waste bowl. The last apprentice didn't bother. They found him in the morning, half the workshop burned, his eyes wide open, as if he'd seen something that terrified him. You learned your lesson. You always clean up top, the hours bleed together. You grind minerals, measure powders, whisper the Latin words that sound more like spells than formulas. Solve et coagula. Your master chants dissolve and bind. It's not just about the metals. It's about transformation itself, turning the flawed into the perfect. At some point, he leaves for the library, leaving you alone. The silence is thick, broken only by the bubbling of the alembic. You move to the table, tracing circles in the dust. Your mind drifts to the philosopher's stone, the great promise. They say it can turn base. You don't believe all of it, but part of you wants to. The part that's tired of poverty and smoke and the constant sting in your lungs. A sudden crack snaps you back. One of the flasks fractures, releasing a sharp hiss of vapor. You grab a rag and wrap it around your hand, trying to move it off the flame. The heat bites through the cloth. You manage to drop it into a basin before it bursts. A thin trail of smoke curls upward, forming something like a hand before it disappears. You sit down hard, heart pounding. Still alive, you whisper to yourself. Still human. Later, your master returns, holding an old parchment. Found something, he says, spreading it across the table. The drawings are rough but familiar: circles, triangles, symbols of elements. This could be it. You lean closer. You really think? He cuts you off. I don't think. I believe. That's the thing about alchemists. They never stop believing, even when everything burns down around them. The rest of the night blows into a fever of work, heating, cooling, mixing, praying. At one point, you catch your reflection in a copper plate. Your eyes are wild, black smudges beneath them, your face thin and pale. You look like someone who belongs more to the smoke than the world. By dawn, you're both slumped over the table, the latest mixture cooling in the crucible. It's the color of dawn pink, faintly glowing. Your master smiles weakly. Maybe not gold, he says, but look how it shines. You can't help but smile too. It's not perfection, but it's proof that you were close. He tells you to rest. You nod, though you know you'll lie awake, thinking of the shimmer that almost was. The room smells of burnt sulfur and dreams that refuse to die. You glance out the window. The city is waking up: bakers, farmers, guards, normal people. You envy them a little, their simple certainty. But then you look at your stained hands and realize something. You may never make gold, but you've already turned your life into something extraordinary, dangerous, secret, half mad, but undeniably yours. And maybe that's its own kind of alchemy. The fire never really goes out in the forge, it just sleeps. You wake it with a hammer's strike, the first blow of the morning echoing through stone walls blackened with soot and sweat. Sparks leap like fireflies, painting your arms with orange stars. You don't flinch anymore. You've earned your calluses the hard way. You are a blacksmith, the backbone of medieval life. Every hinge, horseshoe, sword, and nail in the village has passed through your hands. Kings need crowns, knights need blades, peasants need plows, and you're the one who gives shape to all of them. But today, it's not a plow or nail someone's asking for. It's a weapon. You run your thumb along the raw iron, feeling its chill even near the fire. The noble who commissioned it wanted something fit for war. They always do. You'll make it perfect, even if perfection means blisters and burns. The hammer rises and falls in rhythm, clang, hiss, breathe, repeat. The world narrows to heat and sound and motion. Sweat runs into your eyes, stinging, but you don't stop. The forge doesn't forgive hesitation. The moment you slow, the metal hardens, and all that work turns to waste. You've seen men die because of that. A weak blade can shatter mid-battle. A broken hinge can crush a hand. A bad horseshoe can lame a warhorse. So, when the fire spits and roars, you meet it head-on. There's a strange music in it, the song of the anvil. Villagers hear it from afar and know you're awake. Kids sometimes peek through the door, wide-eyed, watching as the red-hot metal bends like wax under your strikes. You pretend not to notice, but a small smile tugs at your mouth. Once, your master told you, iron remembers the hand that shaped it. You didn't understand back then. Now you do. Every swing carries something of you: your patience, your anger, your life. By midday, your shirt clings to your back, and the forge smells like burnt leather and molten dreams. You quench the blade in all, the hiss loud as thunder. Smoke coils upward, and for a moment, the blade glows gold before fading to gray. You lift it, turning it in the light, checking for flaws. It's perfect or close enough to fool anyone but you. You run a whetstone along the edge, slow and deliberate. Sparks fly again. Each one feels like a heartbeat. A traveler stops by, watching. Beautiful work, he says. You must love it. You pause, then laugh softly. Love it? Maybe, but it doesn't love me back. You hold up your scarred hand, skin toughened and split. She's a cruel mistress, this forge. He smiles, tosses a coin on the table, and leaves. You drop it into a jar, already half full of others' payment for endless hours of labor, yet somehow never enough. Scholars still argue whether medieval blacksmiths were craftsmen, artists, or unsung engineers. You think they were all three. You've seen beauty born from brutality. You've made it with your own hands. In the evening, when the fire finally starts to dim, you take a moment to sit by the open door. The world outside hums with the sound of crickets and distant laughter. For a while, you just listen. The ache in your shoulders is heavy but familiar, a reminder that you've earned your place in the world, one strike at a time. Then, as if drawn by instinct, you reach for another piece of iron. You heat it, just enough to shape, not destroy. You're not making anything for anyone this time. No order, no coin, just the pleasure of turning raw metal into something that wasn't there before. The first hit echoes through the forge. It feels different, lighter, freer. You shape the iron into a spiral, then a curve, something useless but beautiful. A decoration for your own wall, maybe? Or a gift for no one in particular. That's the secret, you think. The job breaks you only if you forget to make something for yourself once in a while. As the night deepens, you bank the fire, cover it with ash, and wipe the soot from your arms. The forge sleeps again. Outside, the moonlight glints off the edge of the new blade, sharp enough to cut silence itself. You smile, because tomorrow, you'll do it all over again. And though your hands will ache and your lungs will sting, the world will still turn, and someone, somewhere, will live a little easier because of what you made. You lock the door, whisper a small thank you to the fire, and step into the cool night. The stars look like sparks, too tiny reminders of every strike, every scar, every stubborn act of creation that's ever kept the dark at bay. And for once, the world feels quiet enough for you to rest.